Welcome, vibrant viewers, to Healthy Living on Supreme Master Television. According to the World Health Organization, cancer is one of the leading causes of death in the world. Each year, over 12 million people across the globe are diagnosed with cancer, and 7.6 million succumb to the disease. The numbers are projected to continue rising, with an estimated 12 million deaths in 2030. Today, we have the honor to share the first of an 8-part series featuring excerpts from the Cancer Project's Eating Right for Cancer Survival, a 2-set DVD of presentations by esteemed nutrition researcher and author Dr. Neal Barnard, MD. That is a companion to the book, The Cancer Survivor's Guide, written by Dr. Barnard and registered dietitian Jennifer Riley. Dr. Barnard is the president of the Cancer Project, a U.S.-based nonprofit organization advancing cancer prevention and survival through nutrition, education, and research. Since its founding in 2004, the project has strived to promote the vegan diet as the answer to cancer. The Cancer Project is an affiliate of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, a group created by Dr. Barnard in 1985 that is comprised of physicians and concerned citizens in the U.S. wishing to improve public health. The committee is also actively involved in raising awareness of the benefits of a plant-based diet through such projects as the 21-Day Vegan Kickstart program and seeking to amend federal nutrition guidelines. Dr. Barnard has served as the principal investigator on many clinical studies examining the links between diet and health, and his work has been published in top scientific and medical journals. He is often interviewed by the national media in the U.S. for his perspectives on important issues in nutrition, health, and medicine. We are now pleased to show a segment from How Foods Fight Cancer, a chapter from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival DVD.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. In today's program, we're going to zero in on how nutrition affects not just our risk of getting cancer or helping us to stay free of cancer, but also, if we have this condition already, how we can use nutrition for better survival. Now, I have 2 points before we get started. The first is, let's set aside blame. There's a natural tendency, if you've got any kind of serious health condition, to think, what caused this? Did I cause this? Or did somebody else cause it? Well, I understand that, but for now, let's just set that aside. And the second point is, work with your doctor or healthcare provider. All of the information that you're about to receive is designed to be used in addition to the tests or treatments your doctor might prescribe, not instead of them. Okay, let's get started. First of all, what is cancer? Cancer starts in the inside of a cell, inside the nucleus, is DNA. That's the blueprint that makes each cell what it is and makes you what you are. But that DNA can be easily damaged. And when it is, instead of that cell staying put and doing its normal job, it starts multiplying out of control. It's like a weed that then sends roots into the flower bed, disrupting the other plants. And a little bit of it can break off, get into the bloodstream, and spread somewhere else in the body, where it does the same thing, spreading and damaging other tissues. That's what cancer is. But there are certain things that make it worse, and certain things that can help make it better. In the worst category are hormones. If a woman has breast cancer, the female sex hormones, estrogens, they tend to fuel its growth, and they make it more likely, not only that it will occur in the first place, but more likely to spread. If a man has prostate cancer, the male sex hormone, testosterone, does exactly the same thing. It encourages its growth and encourages its spread. Now, the first inklings that cancer had anything to do with diet came from comparisons between different countries. If you compare Japan to the United States, for example, a Japanese woman is much less likely to develop cancer compared to an American woman. But if she gets cancer, she is much more likely to survive. Why would that be? Well, the first theory was, well, Japanese women are thin. And that's important because body fat actually acts as a factory for making estrogens. The more fat you have, the more it cranks out estrogens, I mean female sex hormones, into the bloodstream. And as they're coursing around through the blood, they're just looking for that one cancer cell. And they act like fertilizer on weeds. They make it grow, they make it spread, they make the disease much more aggressive. Well, that's part of it. Diet plays a role, even if a woman is not heavy. And if a woman is on a diet that's high in fat and very low in fiber, you know what I'm talking about when I say fiber? plant roughage, that kind of diet also increases the amount of estrogen in her blood, the amount of fertilizer on the weeds, if you will. Well, how does that happen? Well, researchers learned a long time ago that if a woman goes on a diet that has a lot of fat in it and not very much fiber, the amount of estrogen in her bloodstream goes up within just a couple of weeks. It's measurably higher than it was before. Part of the reason for this is that fiber helps your body get rid of extra estrogens. Picture this. Your liver is filtering your blood every minute of every day, and it's looking for things that don't belong there. And it will find extra estrogen, and it's in the blood. The liver pulls it out. It sends it down through a little tube called the bile duct into the intestinal tract and sends it out with the wastes. So the liver is filtering the blood. Here's an estrogen. I don't think we need you anymore. Let's get rid of you. It pulls it out, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract. Out it goes. Good system. Only problem is it depends on one thing, and it depends on fiber. If you ate plenty of fiber, vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains, then that little estrogen that the liver found, it sent it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract. It hooked onto the fiber, and the fiber is what carried it away. But let's say my lunch was skim milk, yogurt, chicken breast. How much fiber is in those foods? Well, they're not plants. They don't have plant roughage. There is no fiber in any of those foods. There is no fiber in anything from an animal. So what happens? The liver is filtering the blood, finds the estrogen, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract. Where's my fiber? Where's my fiber? There isn't any fiber. So what does it do? It goes back into the bloodstream. It's reabsorbed again. And it circulates around the body, and then it arrives back at the liver. And the liver says, what are you doing here? And the liver actually removes that estrogen again, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract, looking for fiber, looking for fiber, looking for fiber. There isn't any. It's reabsorbed again. And this estrogen does this circle we call enterohepatic circulation. Entero means intestinal tract. Hepatic means liver, like hepatitis. And this works not just for estrogen, it also works for testosterone. A man who's at higher risk for prostate cancer, if he can't get rid of extra testosterone, he uses that same system. If he has lots of fiber in his diet, his testosterone level will be adequate but not excessive because the liver finds the testosterone and gets rid of it. Same thing for cholesterol. You've heard about how oats will reduce cholesterol. You know what I'm talking about? Well, this is how it works. You ate oats, they're rich in fiber. The liver finds the cholesterol, sends it down the bile duct, and it's going down there, and if the oats or other kinds of fiber are there, it carries it out with the wastes, and your cholesterol level goes down. Now, that's the theory. Does it actually work? Well, the answer is yes, it does. There have been a number of studies that have looked at the effect of changing the diet on not only hormones, but also on cancer rates. And there are two that I want to share with you really quickly. One was at the State University of New York at Buffalo. They looked at women who already had breast cancer. There were about 900 of them, and what they found was that as the time went by, the risk of dying of that disease increased by 40% for every 1,000 grams of fat the women consumed per month. Now, to picture what I'm talking about, let's say you're on a plant-based diet without animal products, without a lot of added fat. There's really not much fat in that kind of diet. For comparison purposes, let's take a typical American diet that might have lots of cheeseburgers and gravy and French fries, a lot of fat in it, right? Those two differ by a good 1,000 to 1,500 grams of fat every single month. That's good for a 40 to 60% difference in whether you're dead or alive at any time point down the road. Now, another study called the Women's Intervention Nutrition Study, the WINS study, was very important. They brought in women who had breast cancer, and what they did was they asked them to lower the fat content of their diet. And the women did this. They compared the women on the diet who were getting about 30, 33 grams of fat. That's really low. They compared them to a control group that got about 51 grams of fat. That's lower than average, but not as good as the people on the special diet. They then tracked one thing. These women had been treated for breast cancer. Did it come back? Or did they get a new kind of cancer? Because as you may know, if you've been diagnosed with cancer before, breast cancer, you are more likely not only to get a recurrence, but to get a new cancer again. And what they found was absolutely being on this diet did help prevent it. It cut the risk of a recurrence or a new cancer by 24%. Same thing with prostate cancer. Researchers have looked at men with prostate cancer, changed their diets, and looked to see, does this really make a difference for me? The answer is yes. Dr. Dean Ornish, you know his work? He did the research studies on showing that you could actually reverse heart disease. He used a low-fat vegetarian diet, exercise, stress reduction, which is why he didn't do the study in Washington, D.C., where I live. And what he found is that it does reverse heart disease, but then he put this to work for men who have prostate cancer, and the results were amazing. 93 men, everybody had prostate cancer. As you may know, if you have prostate cancer, you don't necessarily have to have treatment right away. Many of these men are older, they can sometimes wait, and they track a blood test called PSA, prostate-specific antigen. If it's not going up too fast, you just wait. If it is going up fast, you need treatment. You can't wait anymore. And what they found was that half of the group put on a vegetarian diet compared to the other half that didn't change their diet. The men on the vegetarian diet showed their PSA. It wasn't rising. It started to fall. It fell about 4% over the course of this trial. That's good. That means we're regaining our health. And there wasn't a single person in that part of the study that needed to have treatment. But in the control group, their PSA was going up. It went up about 6%. And when you looked at the group, out of the 49 men in that part of the study, 6 of them couldn't wait. Their cancer was aggressively advancing. They had to have treatment. And there's another wrinkle in all of this. There's a specific effect, apparently, of dairy products. Men who consume more dairy products seem to be at higher risk of prostate cancer. Now, we need more research on this, but 2 large Harvard studies have shown that when men consume a lot of dairy products, their risk of prostate cancer is substantially higher than that of other men. And the reason may be that dairy products change a man's bloodstream. What they do is they increase the amount of something called IGF-1. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor number 1. I think of it as a little bit like cholesterol. You know how if I take a blood sample and I measure cholesterol, that tells me what? It tells me, are you going to have a heart problem down the road? Not necessarily right now, but 10 years from now. If I draw a blood sample and I check your IGF-1 level, insulin-like growth factor number 1, if it's higher, that means your risk of certain cancers is higher too. Prostate cancer for men, breast cancer for women. Why would milk cause IGF-1 to increase, which it does? Well, think about this. What's milk's job? What is milk for? Milk's job is to help a little baby calf grow fast. And once the calf is big enough to graze, there's no need for milk anymore, right? So, if milk's job is to make things grow, it includes not just protein, not just fat, not just sugar, that's the lactose that's in the milk. It also contains hormones and growth factors. And inside the calf's body, it causes the production of more growth factors that allow the tissues to grow. One of these, IGF-1, is a very potent stimulus for cancer cell growth. If I mix IGF-1 in a test tube with cancer cells, they grow like crazy. Well, a man or woman who drinks 3 glasses of milk per day has about a 10% rise in the amount of IGF-1 in his or her bloodstream. So it's very rapid. It happens very, very quickly. So many researchers are now saying, well, if I don't want to have things growing in my body, maybe I should not be having food that causes growth factors to be produced. Now, that's not all there is to it. When researchers have looked at colon cancer, cancer of the second half of the digestive tract, one of the big factors that seems to play a role is meat consumption, and especially when meat is grilled, when it's cooked at very high temperatures. Why would that be? There's something in the grilled meat called HCAs. You probably have never heard of this. It stands for heterocyclic amines, and this will not be on the test. But HCAs, heterocyclic amines, are cancer-causing chemicals. Dozens and dozens of studies have shown that the more of these that are in the foods you eat, the higher your risk of cancer down the road. Well, where do they come from? You can go into just about any restaurant, and if you order the grilled chicken sandwich, grilled chicken salad, whatever it is, get that grilled chicken with the nice little grilling lines on it, send it to a laboratory. They'll tell you there are HCAs in there, heterocyclic amines. These are carcinogens. And they come from heating up meat at a high temperature. Within the meat is something called creatine. There are other amino acids. There are sugars. There are natural fats in it. When the meat is heated to a high temperature and it's kept there for long enough to cook, that's when the carcinogens form. And regrettably, people are trying to be healthy. They don't want to eat the fried chicken, so we're eating all the grilled chicken, and the carcinogens are there. Americans now eat, believe it or not, about 1 million chickens per hour. And we are getting quite a load of these carcinogens. If I take a hamburger and I grill it, what happens? Well, the carcinogens are likely to form. If I take chicken breast and I grill that, same thing. The carcinogens are likely to form because it's hot animal muscle. What if I take a veggie burger and I grill that? What happens? It gets warm. That's about it. It's not an animal muscle, so these carcinogens are not likely to form. Now, it's important to say that not every food is bad for you. There are plenty of things that are good for you. You know about beta-carotene? What color is beta-carotene? And where do we find it? Carrots, cantaloupes, pumpkins. Okay, sure. Now, it's an orange coloring that's there to protect the plant. It protects against free radicals. Free radicals are chemicals that can lead to cancer. It protects you, too. And its cousin is called lycopene. Lycopene is in tomatoes, it's in other reddish plants, and it's an even more powerful antioxidant even than beta-carotene. So how does all this translate into something that I'm going to actually eat? Well, I like to use something called the new 4 food groups. The new 4 food groups means whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and the bean group, or you might call it the legume group, beans, peas, and lentils. So those are our ingredients, and on my plate it might start with, say, a bowl of oatmeal in the morning, top it with cinnamon and raisins, or maybe a half a cantaloupe, some rye toast, hold the butter. Now for lunch, let's say I'm at a fast food restaurant. Don't get the greasy taco dripping with cheese. Instead, you have the bean burrito or something like that. Instead of the hamburger, have the veggie burger. Have lots of vegetables. And at dinner, let's say we're out at an Italian place, you're not going to have the meat sauce on your pasta, and you're not going to have the Alfredo. But let's say you have the pasta with a lot of nice marinara sauce, and all the doctors leap to their feet and applaud all that lycopene in your dinner, and have the vegetables on the side. So this isn't suffering, but it sure is a healthy way to go. And if you do it every day, what happens? Vegetarians have about 40% of everybody else's cancer risk. That's the careless vegetarians, the French fry eating vegetarians. If you throw away the French fries and really build in the high fiber foods and lots of vegetables and fruits, you can do better than that. But wait, there's actually more. Your cholesterol level falls. When people go to this kind of diet, they lose weight, on average about 1 pound per week. And don't get nervous. If you're already at your normal weight, you don't keep losing. You don't just blow away. But if you've got weight to lose, you'll generally lose it. Heart disease, if you have artery blockages, it actually tends to reverse. The arteries actually start opening up. Your energy level improves as well. Digestion gets better. If you have diabetes, your blood sugars fall. If you've got high blood pressure, it tends to come down. And sometimes people find if they've had a little bit of arthritis, that gets better. If they've got migraines, that gets better too. Why is that? This doesn't happen in every case, but it happens sometimes. And I think it's because there are certain foods that tend to trigger these things. And getting away from them allows the body to start to heal. So let me encourage you all to be part of this team. We're learning a lot, and we're spreading it around to our loved ones. People all over the world are test driving this kind of routine, putting it to work, and I'd like you to be part of it. If you're thinking, well, okay, I'll stick my toe in that swimming pool, I'll give it a try, here's what I suggest you do. As a preliminary, just try some new recipes. No long-term commitment. You just give it a try and see what you like. And when you're ready, take about a 3-week period, and during that 3 weeks, do it 100%. Jump in, head first, make every meal for the 3 weeks a really healthy meal. Why do I say that? Because you know it's true. If you have a healthy meal on Monday and another healthy meal on, say, Thursday, and maybe another one the following Wednesday, Are you going to see any benefit from that at all? No. And are your tastes going to change? But let's say you do it every single meal, every day, even for a short period of time, you find that your tastes actually change. Your body feels different. Most people go through their whole lives never having even a week on the diet their body was actually designed for. And this is a chance to really do it. So give it a go. And if you want to, you can try these transition foods. I'm suggesting you get away from meat. So if you want to have the veggie burgers and the veggie hot dogs in the transition on your way to simpler foods, go ahead. So we've covered the basis. I hope that you agree that nutrition is a really powerful force for health. Okay, I think you've got the idea. Thank you.
We now present excerpts from the chapter Fueling Up on Low-Fat Foods from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival DVD.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. When researchers have looked to find the best means of preventing cancer, one of the things they've really focused in on is how people eat in different places around the world and how cancer rates differ, sometimes dramatically from one place to another. And one of the first comparisons that really bore fruit, so to speak, was the comparison between Asia and then the Western countries. In Japan, the risk that a woman will develop cancer is quite low, at least traditionally, compared to Western countries. And for women who get cancer, survival is much better, again, compared to Western countries. Well, that could be because in Asian countries, women tend to be thinner, but it also seems to relate to their diet. There's a lot less fat in a traditional Asian diet. The staple is rice, noodles. There's a lot of use of vegetables, not much of very fatty foods, and that seemed to play a big difference. But it's not just all fats. Really the animal fats, the saturated fats, that seem to be a big part of the problem. But things are changing. You don't have to just compare between, say, Japan and North America. You can stay home in Japan. Bad food comes to you. You've now got all kinds of fast food restaurants and meaty diets. The westernization of the diet is causing a change right there. And we've seen dramatic differences as this has occurred, particularly for two kinds of cancer. The digestive cancers, you know what I'm talking about, colon cancer especially, and also the hormone-related cancers. In men, this would mean prostate cancer. In women, breast cancer and uterine cancer especially. And the reason seems to be that when a woman is on a high-fat diet and a low-fiber diet, her hormones change. There's more estrogen in her bloodstream, and that seems to fuel the growth of cancers. Same for men. If he's on a diet without much fiber and with a lot of fat, his testosterone level rises. It doesn't make him more macho. What it's going to do is increase his likelihood of getting cancer. The differences are huge. A study of Japanese women compared those who were affluent and had westernized their diets early on, compared them to women who were less affluent and stuck with their traditional diet of rice and noodles and that sort of thing. The difference in breast cancer was 900%. Those women who westernized their diets were 9 times more likely to develop this condition compared to the other women. Now, it even matters after a person has been diagnosed. If a woman has breast cancer, if she has more fat in her diet, numerous studies have shown her survival is likely to be shorter. That cancer is more likely, after treatment, it's more likely to come back. There was an important study at the State University of New York at Buffalo. What they did, it wasn't a treatment study. They were just following the women who were getting treatment separately. It was about 900 women, and they tracked their fat intake and then how they did over the next 12 years. What they found was dramatic. The likelihood of dying at any time point down the road was increased by 40% for every 1,000 grams of fat the women were eating per month. Well, what does that mean? If I take a typical American diet, and I add up all the fat that's in that diet day after day after day for a whole month, and I compare that to, say, a vegetarian diet, so there's no animal fat, and I keep the vegetable oils really low, those two diets differ by about 1,000 to 1,500 grams of fat per month. That's good for a 40 to 60% difference in whether you're dead or alive at any time point down the road. So it makes a huge difference. Now, in men, same story. If a man reduces fat intake and increases the fiber intake, well, his testosterone level will come down just a little bit. He's still got enough testosterone, but those excesses that increase the risk of cancer will be gone. Now, a lot of people are aware of this. They think, well, you know, I'm cutting back on fatty foods. I'm switching from beef to chicken. I'm eating more fish. You hear people say that. Well, here's the bad news for you. The leanest beef is about 29% fat as a percentage of its calories, which is what dietitians care about. The leanest chicken is not much lower. It's about 23. Now, fish vary. Some are lower, some are higher. Some are a lot higher. Chinook salmon, 50% fat or even higher. But broccoli is 8% fat. Beans are about 4% fat. Rice is 1 to 5, depending on the type. A potato is 1% fat until it comes out of the oven. And then, of course, at that point, we put on the butter and the sour cream and cheese doodles and bacon bits, and suddenly it's, you know, back up to where you started. But you get the point, that there are certain foods that are very low in fat, they're very high in fiber, and that'll help you. Does it make a difference? You bet.
We now present Dr. Barnard's lecture entitled Favoring Fiber from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival DVD.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. When researchers have looked for parts of the diet that can help us against cancer, prevent it or improve survival, or improve health overall, one of the things we've really keyed in on is fiber. What is fiber? Fiber means plant roughage. And by that I mean it's the part of plants that doesn't get digested right away. And it helps us in many ways. As one thing you know is it helps keep you regular. You hear people say that. All that means is it moves things along. But it doesn't just move food along. It moves carcinogens along. Let's say there was something not too healthy in the food I ate. Well, the quicker it leaves your body, the better off you are. Now, that can mean that if something was going to increase the likelihood of developing colon cancer because it's attacking the cells of your intestinal tract, it's gone. It's gone much faster. That's a good thing. Now, there's another thing, though. Fiber helps remove things that are circulating in your blood. How does that work? Your liver is filtering your bloodstream. Every minute of every day, blood is going through the liver, and the liver is looking for things that don't belong there. It's looking for hormones like estrogen or testosterone. You need some of those, but you don't need a huge excess, so your liver takes them out. It gets rid of cholesterol. It gets rid of medicines and things like that. And what it does is the liver filters the blood, finds a little excess estrogen, pulls it out of the blood, sends it down a little tube called the bile duct, and it ends up in the intestinal tract. And there, this little bit of estrogen goes down, attaches to some fiber that carries it out of the body. Very nice. So if you're thinking, well, a high amount of estrogen in my blood is linked to too much risk of breast cancer, a high fiber diet helps pull it away. One problem. A lot of people don't have much fiber in their diet. Let's say for breakfast I had bacon and eggs. How much fiber is there in that? Well, bacon and eggs aren't from plants. They don't have any plant roughage in it. Let's say for lunch I had yogurt and chicken breast. How much fiber is there? None, right? So the liver filters the blood. The little estrogen gets pulled out, goes down the bile duct, ends up in the intestinal tract looking for fiber, looking for fiber. Where is it? There isn't any. It reabsorbs back into the bloodstream. The estrogen goes around, ends up back at the liver. The liver says, what are you doing here? I thought I got rid of you. It pulls it out of the blood again, sends it down the bile duct into the intestinal tract looking for fiber. Where's my fiber? There isn't any. It's absorbed again. That estrogen will do this cycle over and over and over again. It's called enterohepatic circulation. Entero means intestinal tract. Hepatic means liver, like hepatitis. And this works not just for estrogen, but also cholesterol. Cholesterol will go around and around and around until you eat fiber. You hear about oat bran and oat cereals. They will reduce the amount of cholesterol in the blood. That's all they do. It's not rocket science. What they do is they grab that cholesterol that the liver has sent down, and they make sure it cannot get reabsorbed. That's a good thing. Same for testosterone. A man says, I don't want those testosterone excesses that are going to increase my risk of prostate cancer. Fiber is your friend. It puts the lid on it. It helps you to remove those excesses. Now let me walk you through an exercise. I want to help you to see how much fiber there is in the foods you eat. And inside of just a couple minutes, you are going to know how much fiber there is in just about everything in the store without reading the label. Will you do this with me? Okay, let's take something like a banana. How much fiber is there in a banana? Now, you may not know right offhand, but give me a guess. Give me a guess. Is there 1 gram, 16,000 grams? How much fiber would you say there is in a banana? Anybody? 5, 8, 10, 2. Okay, very good. It's about 2.7 in an average banana. Okay, so not quite 3. How about an apple? Now, an apple's kind of like a banana, so it's not going to be 25. How much fiber would you guess is in an apple? 10, 3, what? About 3.7. So similar to a banana, a little bit more. How about cantaloupe? Now, here's a clue for you. If I take a cup of cantaloupe, it's a little bit more watery, so a little bit less fibrous. So if a banana is 2.7 and an apple's 3.7, what's cantaloupe? Okay, 1 to 2, right, good, about 1.3. So let's say an average fruit, you walk in the store, an average fruit is going to be about 3 grams per fruit. All right, let's take some vegetables. How about if I have a cup of broccoli? Give me a guess. Now, here's a clue. It's maybe broccoli's not quite as watery as a typical fruit, is it? A little more fibrous? So how much fiber would you say is maybe in a cup of broccoli? 6, 7, 8. Okay, about 4.6. So a cup of broccoli, about 4.6. How about carrots? Are they more like broccoli, or is a carrot more like cantaloupe? Well, it's more like broccoli. It's fibrous, right? So how much fiber? About 5? Very good. About 5.2 in a typical cup of carrots. How about iceberg lettuce? Well, it's not 0. It is a plant, okay? But you also know, you're thinking right, it's not huge. It's not like broccoli. So give me a number. 1, 1.5. Okay, perfect. 1.2. All right. So a typical cup of vegetables, we're going to say 4. All right, where am I? Fruit, 3. Vegetables, 4. Very easy, unless it's iceberg lettuce, when we're going to cut that down a little bit. Give me beans now. How about if I have a half cup serving of black beans? How many grams of fiber in that? Now, here's a clue. Beans are not really watery. They're pretty fibrous. So, half cup of black beans? 8, 6, 7. Very good, about 7.5. How about baked beans? Baked beans. 6, 7? Okay, about 6.4. Good. So a typical half cup serving of beans, about 7. All right, where are we? Fruit, 3. Vegetables, 4. Beans, 7. Now let's go to our grain group. How about pumpernickel bread? Actually, a slice of pumpernickel has about 2 grams, about 2.1. It's less than you'd think. How about white bread? 0? Well, now, it's not going to be 0 because it is from a plant. Now, they've done their best to make sure there's no nutrition in there, but they did leave a little. So let's call it about a half a gram of fiber. Okay? So a typical bit of white bread, maybe up to a gram. A more whole grain bread, maybe about 2. But does that surprise you? Fruit is 3, vegetables are 4, beans are 7. The breads, which we think of as being high fiber, are lower. Okay, so our fiber champions, the bean group at about 7 for a half a cup, and then the vegetables at about 4, fruits at about 3, and if I have a slice of bread, if it's white, maybe a gram, if it's whole grain, about 2, typical cereals about 3. Okay, you walk in the store and you can look on the left, you can look on the right, and you can estimate, even for a packaged food or a canned food, what's inside, and you're going to have a pretty good ballpark of whether it has fiber or not. Okay, extra credit. How much fiber is there in a pork chop?
0.
0? 0? We agree? Well, why?
0.5.
Why? Is it from a plant?
It's from an animal.
It's from an animal. Animals don't have plant roughage, so the answer is 0. How about a cup of milk? 0 because it's from an animal, not a plant. Wait, how about if it's skim milk? How about if it's organic skim milk? Still 0? You with me? Okay. How about eggs? 0. How about eggplant? Okay, very good. So there's fiber in eggplant. Okay, so I always like things that are easy to remember. Animal products don't have fiber. Plant products do. So what? Does fiber really help? The answer is yes. Let's say I want to knock off a few extra pounds. One of the best things you can do is pump up the fiber intake in your diet. I'm going to give you a number. Every 14 grams of fiber that are part of your regular daily menu, every 14 grams of fiber cuts your calorie intake by about 10%. So let's say a typical person in the United States is eating maybe 12 grams of fiber per day. Add 14, I get 26. I'm going to feel fuller. And even though I think I'm eating the same amount, my calorie intake drops about 10%. So if I go up another 14 from 26 to, where am I now? 40. My calorie intake drops again. I think I'm eating the same amount, but all that fiber fills me up. My calorie intake falls. Something's happening to my scale. I'm losing weight automatically without ever going hungry. Fiber is a good thing. It improves your digestion, it slims your waistline, it reduces cholesterol, and it'll reduce your cancer risk too. That's the power of healthy fiber. Thanks. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. In today's program, we're going to focus on milk. Most of us grew up with the idea that dairy products were healthy, but cancer researchers are showing us a side of dairy products that might really surprise you. Starting with, what's in milk? Well, if you take a typical glass of milk and you send it to a lab, the first thing you discover is that about 49% of the calories are nothing but fat. And most of this is what we call saturated fat. Some people call it bad fat. That's the fat that causes your cholesterol level to rise. It's also associated, in some studies, with a higher risk of developing breast cancer. So that's why a lot of people are saying, well, I don't want to have whole fat milk. I want to skim that away and have skim or non-fat milk, right? Well, let's say I send that to the lab. The biggest nutrient in it, the biggest source of its calories, about 55%, is sugar. Lactose sugar. That's where most of the calories in skim milk come from. Now, if you have lactose intolerance, meaning that you get a real bellyache from consuming milk, you know all about lactose. But for people who don't, you have no need for this at all, and that's the primary nutrient in it. In addition to that, there are proteins in milk, and these proteins, for some people, trigger arthritis pains or allergies, or for some folks, even allergies. And diabetes researchers are showing that early exposure to those dairy proteins might be the cause, or at least a contributor, to the kind of diabetes that starts in childhood. Well, what about its link to cancer? Researchers have known for a long time that countries that consume a lot of dairy products, like Switzerland or Sweden, the other Scandinavian countries, European countries, they have a lot more prostate cancer compared to other countries where dairy is not a big part of the diet. I'm talking about China or Japan or Thailand. Dairy is not a big thing in those countries, at least traditionally. Well, if it's true that a higher intake of milk could in some way be associated with a higher risk of prostate cancer, then it ought to be true in this country. Let's say I compare men who drink a lot of milk, compare them to the men who don't. Is it true? Do they really get more prostate cancer? At Harvard, they did exactly that study. It was called the Physicians' Health Study. It was about 21,000 men. All of them were physicians. Everybody's healthy. Nobody has cancer. They tracked their diet, and then they watched how the men did as time went on. And it turned out that those men who were the big dairy consumers, I'm talking about a couple of servings per day, which is not out of the range of what people do, their risk of prostate cancer was 34% higher compared to the men who generally avoided milk. They did another study called the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study. It was health professionals, but not physicians. It was pharmacists and other kinds of health professionals, but they found exactly the same thing, that those men who were the big dairy consumers, a couple of servings per day, had in this case about a 60% higher risk of developing prostate cancer. Well, what's this about? Why should milk do this? Well, think about it. What's milk's job? What's the purpose of milk? Okay, it's there to dunk cookies in. It's there to splash on my cereal. No. What milk is for is to help a calf grow big, right? That's what it's for. It's to help rapid growth. So the cow makes milk, the baby cow, the calf, consumes it, and that calf is going to grow very rapidly. Now, that's for two reasons. One reason is there are nutrients in the milk that support growth. There's a lot of fat. There's a lot of sugar, the lactose sugar. There's a lot of protein. But the other thing is there are hormones in milk. There are growth factors in milk. And consuming it causes these things to change inside a man's body. And one that cancer researchers are really zeroing in on is called IGF-1. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. Insulin-like growth factor number 1. IGF-1, it's a mouthful of a name, but all it really means, insulin-like means it's like insulin, meaning it helps sugar to get into the cells, out of the blood into the cells. Growth factor means it's a growth factor. If I take IGF-1 in a test tube, I add cancer cells to it, they grow like crazy. That's true for breast cancer cells. That's true for prostate cancer cells. So let's say I stick a needle in a man's arm, and I measure how much IGF-1 he's got in his blood, and then I start feeding him a couple of glasses of milk every day. Or let's say it's a woman, and I feed her a couple glasses of milk every day. What you find is over the course of the next several weeks, the amount of IGF-1 in the blood rises. So this is just like a calf. The calf drinks the milk, and this IGF-1 is built in the blood, and it causes the growth of tissues. Now, growth is a good thing at certain times, but it's not such a good thing when you're an adult, and you've got a cancer cell waiting somewhere. Growth of that cancer cell is a very dangerous thing. So, in international comparisons, when we look at who has the highest risk of cancer, it's those countries that have a high dairy intake with regard to prostate cancer, and a high IGF-1 may be the reason for it. But other forms of cancer seem to be related to this as well. There is some speculation that breast cancer may or may not be linked to milk consumption, and the evidence is as follows. Some studies show higher risk, some show lower risk. But when people have looked at IGF-1 levels, I mean, I draw a blood sample and I look at what it is now, and your risk of getting cancer, the higher IGF-1 is associated with a higher risk of breast cancer. Cancer of the ovary has been looked at as well. And here I think we need more research, but there is some suggestion that there's a higher risk among milk drinkers, higher risk of ovarian cancer. For colon cancer, it's probably the reverse. Calcium seems to help prevent cancer, so milk drinkers seem to have a little bit lower risk of colon cancer. But the point is, there are plenty of healthy sources of calcium. You don't need to drink milk for it, so you can get the protection without the risky factors. Now, you might be saying, well, wait a minute. So you're kind of suggesting here that milk is not a really great thing in your diet. Well, let me be clear about this. I think babies need milk. They need mother's milk. A baby should have breast milk. And we should do what we can to help kids to be breastfed. After the age of weaning, there's no physical requirement for milk at all. It's strictly a cultural thing. But where am I going to get my calcium? Well, a couple of points. The first is, researchers have looked at the countries where people consume a lot of milk. You'd think those people are never going to have a hip fracture because of all that milk they're getting and bringing calcium into their diet. You know what? It's just the opposite. That the countries that get the highest milk intake have the highest risk of hip fracture. The countries with low intake of milk and relatively low calcium intakes actually do better. They have stronger bones and have less risk. Within this country, at Harvard, the Nurses' Health Study, have you heard about this study? The Nurses' Health Study has been going on for many, many years, and tracking women over 18 years, they found that those who got the most milk in their diet had no protection whatsoever from bone breaks. It didn't seem to make any difference at all. So there are some things that you can do to protect your bones. First is, if you got calcium in your bones now, let's keep it. Let's not lose it. Well, how do I do that? Well, avoiding animal protein helps. Did you know that? Animal protein causes the body to lose calcium. Let me say that again. Animal protein, I'm talking about meat, I'm talking about eggs, even the protein in dairy products. Animal protein causes your body to lose calcium. Where's it going? It's in the blood. It's going out through the kidney and into the urine. It's leaving the body. Sodium does the same thing. A high salt diet, potato chips, salt that we add in the kitchen, that does the same thing. You lose calcium. Caffeine does it too. Not the occasional cup of coffee, but if you're a big coffee enthusiast, as some of you may be, a high caffeine intake is associated with some loss of calcium as well. Exercise is, give your bones a reason to live. Exercise is really the best friend of your bones. If you compare a tennis player, you look at their dominant arm, they've got better bone density in that arm than the opposite arm. So exercise really does help strengthen the bones. And oddly enough, vegetables and fruits do as well. Vegetables and fruits, some of them have calcium, some of them don't. But the vegetables and fruits seem to help build up the bony matrix and help the bones stay strong. Sunlight, also important. Sunlight gives you vitamin D. So you're out in the sun hits your skin, vitamin D is made in the skin, and it travels around through the body, and as it's activated, it helps your intestinal tract pull calcium in from the foods that you're eating. So sunlight is going to help you as well. Well, are there foods that aren't from dairy products that have calcium in them? Because I'm going to need some calcium. Well, let me give you 2 words. Greens and beans. The greens means broccoli and all of its cousins. They have lots of calcium in them, except for spinach. Spinach has a lot of calcium, but it's very selfish. It won't let you have it. The calcium in spinach is not very absorbable. But the other greens have a lot of calcium in them, and the absorption rate is actually higher than the absorption percentage from milk. And the other group is the bean group. Beans have a lot of calcium in them. You know, they have soluble fiber in them. They've got iron in them. They've got protein in them. They've even got some omega-3 fatty acids in them. Beans don't have a good lobby group, but they got all kinds of other good things. So the greens and the beans, remember them. Now, if you really want to have a huge calcium intake, you don't need this, but you can. Have you seen these fortified orange juice products, fortified soy milk? They're adding calcium to lots of things, breakfast cereals. You don't need that huge amount of calcium, but it's there if you want it. The point I'm making is that researchers are starting to point a finger at dairy products and teasing out the risks that it might pose us. You don't need it. There are plenty of good calcium sources and really good ways to get away from that and to bring the calcium into your body and to keep it there. And as you replace the dairy products with healthier choices, you'll keep strong bones and you'll keep the rest of your body healthy as well. Thank you.
We are now pleased to show Dr. Barnard's presentation, Replacing Meat, a chapter from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival DVD.
The nice thing is that plant products tend not to produce these heterocyclic amines, which is a good thing. But that's not the only reason why meat might contribute to cancer. In fact, it may not even be the main reason. Meat has a lot of fat in it. It doesn't have any fiber in it. You know, meat's not a plant, so it doesn't have plant roughage in it. And so what that means is that high fat, low fiber combination tends to affect your hormones. If you don't have fiber in your diet and you have a lot of fat, estrogen in a woman's body, testosterone in a man's body starts to increase. And if I'm centering my diet not around rice and vegetables, but around that big chunk of meat, then my hormones are likely to get out of control. So researchers have put this to the test. Do meat eaters really have more cancer or not? And the answer is they sure do. At Harvard University, they've looked at colon cancer. And a man or a woman who eats meat every day, particularly red meat, has about 3 times the risk of colon cancer compared to men or women who tend to avoid it. So it makes a big difference. Now you might say, well, what about fish? I hear fish is okay. Well, fish has a lot of fat, doesn't have any fiber, and if I grill fish, same story. I'm going to find those same heterocyclic amines in the fish as well. So the other thing, by the way, about fish is a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, but it's got good fat in it. You know what I'm talking about, the omega-3 fatty acids. That's true, it does. But the omega-3s are only part of the story. All fats are mixtures. Fish has saturated fat in it. Bad fat. Saturated fat is the kind that raises your cholesterol. It's the kind that's associated with higher breast cancer risk. So fish fat brings you good fat, brings you bad fat too. If you avoid the meat products, what are you doing? You're avoiding the carcinogens, you're avoiding the hormone-changing effects that these foods have, and you're allowing room in your diet to bring the healthy things in. All the vegetables and fruits and things are coming in. Now, you might say, well, am I going to get enough protein? You hear people say that, right? Oh, well, vegetarians get enough protein. And Frances Moore LePay wrote a really good book a few years ago called Diet for a Small Planet. Any of you ever see this book? She said, if we follow a vegetarian diet, we could save this planet. We could feed hungry people, and that's true, because instead of feeding all the feed grains to animals to get this little bit of meat out, we can eat the grains directly. But she made one mistake. She said, to get adequate protein, you need to eat food in certain combinations. She had a list of grains and said, eat them with the beans, and if one is missing something, the other will make up for it. And that's sort of true, except The American Dietetic Association looked at this and said, it's actually much easier. If you eat any normal combination of plant foods, you get all the protein that you're ever going to need. So you don't need to do this protein complementing. You don't have to do that. Just eat any normal combination of foods that your tastes call for, and you're going to get all the protein that you need. So if you want to complement your proteins, just say something nice about them. That's all you have to do. Now, people do freak out about this a little bit. I was flying once, and back in the old days when they used to provide meals in flight, I would always order the vegetarian meal because you get served first. And there's a guy sitting there next to me. He says, why did you get served and the rest of us haven't? I said, well, I just ordered a special meal. Well, what kind? Is it vegetarian? Oh, you're a vegetarian, are you? Don't you feel kind of weak? And so the psychoanalyst in me leapt to the fore, and I said, well, what's your image of strong? Give me a strong animal. Oh, he said, strong like a bull, or a stallion, or a gorilla, elephant. These are all vegans, okay? Well, you get the point. A pussycat is a meat eater. A bull or a stallion gets that massive rippling musculature from plant foods. And what that means is that plants have protein in them. You may not realize it, but if you take some broccoli, about 40% of it is protein. If you take beans, they're about 30% protein. And if you take tofu, it's about 40% protein. So the animal protein is the one you want to get away from. The plant protein is the same one that makes animals strong, is the one that you want to have. If you look at what is in meat, it's really just a mixture of protein and fat. There isn't any fiber in it. There isn't any complex carbohydrate in it. There isn't any vitamin C in it. It's protein mixed with fat, plus the occasional parasite, perhaps. But from a nutritional standpoint, I mean, it's really just protein mixed with fat. Now, we all really grew up with meat-based diets. I grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, and that was the only way we knew to eat. Today, we know better. Today, we're discovering the advantages of plant-based nutrition. Thank you.
We are now pleased to show Dr. Barnard's presentation, Cancer-Fighting Compounds and Immune-Boosting Foods, a chapter from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival DVD.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. What is it that starts the cancer process? That's important because if I know what starts it, then I can prevent it from getting started. Cancer starts with damage to DNA. Inside each cell of your body is DNA. That's the blueprint that makes the cell what it is and makes you what you are. And that DNA is damaged. What's it damaged by? It's damaged by something called a free radical. Have you heard about free radicals? Free radicals sounds like a complicated sort of a thing, but what it actually is oxygen. Every minute of every day, hopefully, we're breathing in oxygen, we're breathing out carbon dioxide, and that oxygen is life-giving. But oxygen is also very unstable. In some conditions, oxygen can even be explosive. It's an unstable molecule, so as you're breathing it in, as it's used in the body, it gets changed. When I say changed, I mean the oxygen molecule. If you could look at it very close up, it has too many electrons on it, or electrons in unstable orbits. It becomes a little bit like a piranha. It gets inside the cell and it wants to take a bite out of your DNA, or it takes a bite out of the cell membrane itself. If those cells are in your skin, free radical damage is the cause of wrinkles. It's the cause of the aging process. If there were no free radical damage at all, our lives would be very, very different. And when it comes to cancer, it's the free radicals getting into the cell, into the nucleus, attaching the DNA, and taking a bite out of it. The free radical is trying to get stable, and it does this by attacking the other cells of the body. Well, the nice thing is we have defenses against free radicals. Beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is found in which kinds of foods? It's found carrots, of course, but also all of the orange foods like cantaloupes and pumpkins and sweet potatoes. And beta-carotene parks in the cell membrane, and it waits there, and the free radical comes along and it attacks the beta-carotene, not you. That's why it works. Now, lycopene as well is in red foods like tomatoes, watermelon. Same story. It parks in the cell membrane and helps protect against it. And that's a good thing. Now, these foods also will boost immunity. They boost the immune system. How do they do that? By protecting the white blood cells of the body. Think about this. What is the immune system? We need an immune system because if you don't have one, you'll be felled by a virus or by a bacterium or by cancer cells. The immune system, in your bloodstream, you have red blood cells. The red blood cells carry oxygen. You have white blood cells. The white blood cells are there as sort of the bodyguards for everybody else. They're swimming along, and if they see a virus that doesn't belong there, they engulf it. They destroy it. They see a bacteria, they destroy it. If they find a cancer cell, they can tell the difference between a cancerous cell and a healthy cell. They try to destroy it. And we probably have cancer cells arising in our bodies all the time. But if our immune system recognizes them, grabs them, and destroys them, you'll never know that it ever had occurred. Well, these foods actually protect your immune system. Beta-carotene will protect you, and the carrots and the yams and the sweet potatoes and things that provide it will protect you as well. Now, there's one little caveat I have here, and that is if you're undergoing certain kinds of cancer treatments, your doctor might say, don't have those antioxidants in your diet, because they imagine they'll protect the cancer cell that they're trying to wipe out. The point is simply this, that these foods are big cellular protectors. Well, does it work? Does it matter? Yes, it sure does. There was a Canadian study of women who had breast cancer, and they looked at their diets, and they looked at who did well and who didn't do well. And what they found was that those women who had the most beta-carotene in their diet, and what foods are we talking about? Beta-carotene-rich foods? Carrots.
Pumpkins.
Okay, yams, the pumpkins, cantaloupe, right, sure. By the way, also the green vegetables. Did you know this? Broccoli has beta-carotene too. You can't see it because it's got a lot of chlorophyll in it. Do this sometime. Leave some broccoli just sitting on your shelf for about 2-3 weeks. What happens to it? The green fades away, the orange comes out, and you can see it, okay? It's sort of like in the autumn. When the chlorophyll is gone, you see these other colors come out. Well, one of those colors is beta-carotene. It's there in the green leafy vegetables. Not as much as carrots, but it's there. Okay, so in this Canadian study, those women who had the most beta-carotene in their diets lived substantially longer compared, in other words, it helped keep their cancer at bay compared to others. Well, how much beta-carotene? How does this work? Here were the numbers. If they had more than 5 milligrams of beta-carotene every day, they had double the survival odds compared to those women who got less than 2 milligrams every day. What's 5 milligrams of beta-carotene? A half a carrot. About a quarter cup of sweet potatoes. No big deal. It's from a diet standpoint, very easy to do, but it makes a big difference. And there was a study called the Women's Healthy Eating and Living Study, the WELL study. Same thing. They had a group of individuals, they brought them in, and as one part of this study, they did blood tests on everybody, and they analyzed them for what are called carotenoids, beta-carotene, and all of its chemical cousins that help neutralize these free radicals and help boost immunity. And what they found was that those individuals who had the most carotenoids in their bloodstream, meaning they were eating their vegetables, eating their fruits, they had a much higher likelihood of surviving their cancer, not having a recurrence, doing very, very well with it. Now, how much beta-carotene should I really get from day to day? Well, the federal government doesn't set any recommended daily intake of beta-carotene. What they do say is that if a man gets about 11 milligrams per day and if a woman gets about 9 milligrams per day, he or she will get all the vitamin A that they need. Did you know this? Beta-carotene turns into vitamin A in the body. And in research studies, they will generally use maybe about 30 milligrams per day, which is the amount in 2 large carrots, maybe about 1 yam. Also, a diet rich in green vegetables can give you that. So aim for about 30. Aim for about the equivalent of 2 carrots a day. Now, I do have one caution for you. A lot of people will say, why do I have to eat carrots? I can go to any health food store and they'll sell me beta-carotene in a bottle. Well, researchers thought that too. They figured, people won't change their diets, let's just give them pills. Well, it didn't work out so well. There were 2 research studies among smokers. Smokers are at high risk of lung cancer, so let's give them beta-carotene. Let's see if this protects them. It had exactly the opposite effect. The smokers who took beta-carotene pills had higher risk of developing lung cancer compared to the men who didn't. And the researchers were so shocked by this, they had to stop the research study. When they looked at the data, here's what they found. Those individuals who got more beta-carotene in foods had protection. If they got it as pills, they got worse. Now, we don't know why, but here's what I believe happened. Here's what we're speculating. Is that if you take just one nutrient and you take a huge amount of it, that it might interfere with the absorption of others. But if you get it in food, you're getting these nutrients in the proportions that nature had in mind for you. Now, it's not just beta-carotene, it's also lycopene. Lycopene is the red coloring, as we were talking about, watermelon, pink grapefruit, especially tomatoes. Salsa, yep, salsa, ketchup, these have lycopene in it, believe it or not. They're not necessarily health foods, but they're there. And what do? They park in the cell membrane, the free radical comes along, they attack the carotenoid, not you. Now, vitamin E is also similar. Vitamin E will park in the membrane, and vitamin E is a powerful antioxidant. However, this one I'm going to make a little bit of an exception on. By that I mean more is not really better. I don't like the idea of having a huge amount of vitamin E in your diet, and here's why. Researchers years ago studied premature babies. Little babies are really at risk of free radical damage. Their little lungs are taking in oxygen for the first time, and they really can't handle it. So researchers have used vitamin E compounds as powerful antioxidants, and what they found was that these kids would start to develop infections. Their immune defenses were disabled in part by the vitamin E. So a little vitamin E is good. Get it from foods. I suggest people not go to the store and take vitamin E supplements. So there's one other trick that you can do, though. With regard to vitamin E, if you have vitamin C-rich foods like fruits, citrus fruits, vegetables, vitamin C actually restores vitamin E. Did you know that? You don't even need to take the supplements of vitamin E to have it be restored. Vitamin C-rich foods help sort of recycle and rejuvenate the vitamin E for you. Okay? Now, let's say a word about vitamin C. Everybody knows vitamin C is good for you, but it fights free radicals as well. And if the beta-carotene is in the cell membrane, the vitamin C goes in the watery parts of your body. It's not parked in the membrane. It's free. It's going inside the cell and the watery parts in the cell in case a free radical gets in. And it's between the cells, knocking them out in the bloodstream and other watery parts of the body. And if you have a diet that is loaded with vitamin C-rich fruits and vegetables, you've got your defenses there set. Now, the Canadian research study that I was describing earlier, where women who had cancer were watched to see how they did, it turned out that those women who had more vitamin C in their diets did better. They were less likely to succumb to their condition, which will not surprise you by now. Well, how much? They didn't have to have a huge amount. It turned out that those women who had 200 milligrams or more of vitamin C in their diet had about double the survival odds compared to those who had less than 100 per day. Now, 200 is not a lot. You can get that by having a diet that's rich in vegetables. And one orange has about 60 in it. If you have typical vegetables, they'll all add to it. And you can take supplements if you want to. I don't believe there's toxicity to vitamin C supplements for you. So if you put these all together, you'll have a diet that's rich in vegetables and rich in fruits, and you'll get the beta-carotene and the vitamin C that you need. Now, let me add some other pieces of this puzzle. You know about broccoli? Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, they're in a group called the cruciferous vegetables. And scientists love these vegetables because they give them a lot of things to study. By the way, the name cruciferous means cross-like. The flower has sort of a little shape of a cross. So this will be broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, and many, many others. And what do? They work in the liver to sort of tune up the part of your body, the enzymes in your body, that eliminate toxins. They're called, I'm going to get a little bit complicated here, and this will not be on the test. You have inside your liver different kinds of enzymes that are there to recognize things that aren't supposed to be in your body. The phase 1 enzymes begin the process of eliminating toxins. The phase 2 enzymes actually carry toxins out of the body. They clamp them onto a carrier molecule and pull them away. It's just like a criminal. You take the handcuffs, put them on, attach them to a police officer who carries them away. That's what the phase 2 enzymes do. Broccoli increases the activity of these enzymes very, very rapidly. If you have broccoli today, and I don't mean just like one little floret. I mean, if you have a normal good serving of it today, and if you keep that up, you'll find within 24 to 48 hours, the activity of these phase 2 enzymes is greatly increased. Now, there are a few things that I'm suggesting we want to avoid. And we've talked about fat. Researchers are concerned about fat, and you know what? They're right. Researchers have found that fat interferes with the immune system, and the experiments are heroic. They'll take volunteers, they'll feed them high-fat diets. They'll hook them up to an intravenous and drip fat into their bloodstream. And then, I'm not kidding, don't volunteer for these experiments. What they do is they then pull some of their blood cells out, mix them with cancer cells, and they watch. How fast do the white blood cells chew up and destroy the cancer cells? That gives you a good clue as to whether you have good or bad immunity. Well, the more fat that gets into your bloodstream, the more your white blood cells have trouble doing their job. They just can't work in an oil slick. Okay? So you get the fat out of your diet, your white blood cells will thank you. Now, the good kind of diet would be rich in vegetables and fruits, and it wouldn't have the fat in it, it wouldn't have the meat in it. So what happens if I'm following that kind of diet? Well, at the German Cancer Research Center, they did exactly this test. They took a group of vegetarians. They thought, you aren't eating any meat and you're probably eating a lot of vegetables. Let's test your immunity. They tested something called the NK cell, natural killer cell. This is a white blood cell that is a natural killer. It shoots first and asks questions later. If it finds a cancer cell, it gobbles it up. You want them. And what they found was that the vegetarians had about double the NK cell activity compared to the non-vegetarians, meaning their cells are vigilant. They're looking for cancer cells. They're trying to knock them out. So what we've seen is that a diet that's rich in vegetables and fruits, along with the grains and beans, it's good for immunity. It's good against cancer. And it's good for overall health. Thank you very much.
We are now pleased to show Dr. Barnard's presentations, Maintaining a Healthy Weight, and Foods and Prostate Cancer Survival, 2 chapters from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival DVD.
One of the most important things that a healthy person can do to avoid getting cancer is to keep their body weight down to normal limits. And one of the most important things that a person who has been diagnosed with cancer can do is to keep excess weight away as well. Because the heavier you are, not only are you more likely to develop cancer, if you have it already, you are more likely to succumb to it. What is body fat doing to us? Body fat is not just stored energy. Body fat is a living organ. And body fat actually makes estrogen. You can see this on the beach. If you look at a guy who's developed a little bit of extra body fat and he's now pretty chunky, he has breast development. That's not just fat, that's breast tissue that came because his body fat is building estrogens, and estrogens is causing the development of breasts in a man. And ultimately it will cause impotence, and if he loses weight, those estrogens diminish, and those problems will tend to reverse. Now, this happens in women as well, both women and men. And in women, the concern is that if there's more and more estrogen coursing through your blood, all it takes is one cancer cell. And that estrogen causes the cell to grow. Researchers have long known that Japanese women are less likely than Western women to develop breast cancer, and if they have breast cancer, they are much more likely to survive it. Well, the fact that they are generally slimmer than Western people could be a big part of the reason. Researchers have discovered that indeed their hormones are somewhat lower levels compared to other folks. There's less fuel for the cancer cells to grow. And it isn't just a question of, am I massively overweight versus moderately overweight? It even makes a difference when a person is different gradations of normal weight. There was a study in Shanghai that looked at individuals of different body weights, and we would consider them all pretty much normal. They were using the BMI. Do you know what I'm talking about? Body mass index. The body mass index, or BMI, is a way of measuring your weight but adjusting for your height. Because what's an ideal weight for you depends on how tall you are. And an optimal body weight, people would say, is under 25. If you're over 25 BMI, that's going to be mildly overweight. If you're over 30, that would be called obese. Okay? That's our frame of reference. In the study in Shanghai, they looked at women. Everybody had breast cancer, but some had a BMI under 23. That means they're thin women. And their 5-year survival rate was about 87%. But they then looked at those women who were between 23 and 25. They're still normal weight, but they're just a little bit heavier. Their 5-year survival rate wasn't 87%. It was down to about 84%. Then they looked at those whose body weight was over 25, in the mildly overweight area. And their 5-year survival rate was down to about 80%. You get the picture? The heavier you are, the greater your likelihood of succumbing to this condition. So you want to stay down to a healthy rate, healthy kind of weight. So when people are overweight, what do? Often they don't know what to do, so they stop eating. You skip meals, you'll starve yourself, you go on a punishing low-calorie diet, and regrettably, that's not going to last. For any of you who have, you know this is true, if you've ever been on this kind of diet, I'm really going to starve it off. We end up rebounding. Hunger takes over, and you're going to end up binging and putting back however much weight you lost, and then some. So don't do that. Look around the world and eat the way thin people eat. The thinnest people on the planet live in Asia. Vegetarians are also thin, and they have different characteristics compared to what we have in Western countries. They're eating diets that are, first of all, much lower in fat. They're not eating lots of meat and cheese and fried foods. They're eating rice, vegetables. And if they're eating meat, it's little tiny amounts used as a flavoring. Of course, this is all changing. As diets are westernizing, meat is coming in, dairy products are coming into Asian countries with this unfortunate process of the westernization of the diet. But when researchers have put that kind of diet to a test amongst Western populations, let's eat a plant-based diet, they find that people lose weight in a healthful kind of way. My research group did a study in women who had moderate to severe weight problems, and we asked them to follow a diet that was vegan and low in fat. That was the whole diet. Just avoid the animal products, so there's no animal fat. Keep the vegetable oils low. Now, when you take those out of the diet, that makes room for vegetables, fruits, beans, and grains that are high in fiber. So the diet's filling, low in fat. What happened? As time went by, the women lost weight week after week after week. The average weight loss was about a pound a week. Doesn't sound like much, except after a year, 52 weeks in a year, you're talking serious weight loss, and that's exactly what we saw. So the nice thing about this is you don't have to starve. You don't have to exercise necessarily. Exercise is good, but if you're not able to for whatever reason, your joints are bad, your heart is bad, you can still lose weight. So to put this all together, what is a weight loss regimen? A good weight loss diet is the same kind of diet that's good to keep your cholesterol down, to reduce your cancer risk overall. It's getting away from the animal products. That means avoiding the meats and the dairy products and the eggs. And in the process, you're not just avoiding their fat, you're avoiding their cholesterol, and you're making room for the high fiber foods. Keep the oils very low. Every gram of oil, every gram of any kind of fat has 9 calories. Those calories have your name on them, and if you eat them, it'll go straight to your thighs. Instead, bring in the high fiber foods, the high carbohydrate beans, vegetables, and fruits. Carbohydrates have only 4 calories in a gram. So that's a healthful regimen, and don't go off on high protein diets, the low-carb diet. You know what I'm talking about. They've been very popular. They cause short-term weight loss, but over the long run, people tend not to do very well on them, and they have, unfortunately, some rather bad side effects. Because the diets are so low in carbohydrate, people are avoiding starchy vegetables, they're avoiding fruits, they're avoiding breads, they're avoiding pasta, they're avoiding rice, and instead, they're eating meat and eggs and cheese. Some people's cholesterol will fall if they're losing weight on it, but others, their cholesterols go up. About 1 in 3 low-carb dieters, as their cholesterol go up, sometimes it goes right up through the roof. You don't want to be one of them, and you don't need that kind of approach. So it's a good idea to follow a plant-based diet, bring the exercise into it. Exercise is good. Exercise, well, for a couple of reasons. It burns calories. It's also impossible to eat potato chips while you're out running. So bring it in a good way, and if you have any kind of health condition, definitely see your doctor first. You want to make sure your heart is up to it, you want to make sure your joints are up to it, and the rest of your body is up to it. But when you got your green light, go ahead. How do you start? I start small. About a half-hour walk every day, and I don't mean a trudge, I mean a brisk walk, and then gradually build up from there. And then if you want to do more than that, go ahead. If you want to do resistance training, you know what I mean, like weight training, go see a professional and get a good regimen that's tailored for your own needs. Put it together, and you've got a really good weight loss program because you're on foods that are going to work for you, plus an exercise program that works for you as well. And that's the best prescription for weight control. Thank you very much.
Food and prostate cancer survival is the next lecture by Dr. Barnard.
Hello and welcome. Prostate cancer is a leading killer, and it doesn't have to be, because if we take lessons from around the world and people who follow different kinds of diets, we get clues about how we can actually reduce the likelihood that this will happen in our own lives. And for men who already have prostate cancer, there's a lot they can do to hold it beyond arm's length. Let me share with you a couple of things. First of all, the good news. There's something in foods that is actually protective against prostate cancer, and that is the red coloring in tomatoes. Anybody know what that's called? Very good. Lycopene. Lycopene. L-Y-C-O-P-E-N-E. Lycopene is a cousin of beta-carotene. In the same way as carrots get their orange color from beta-carotene, a tomato gets its red color from lycopene. It's a powerful antioxidant. And studies have shown that men who have just 2 tomato servings per week have about 23% less risk of prostate cancer compared to other men. Men who have 10 or more servings per week have a 35% reduction in their likelihood of ever developing this disease compared to men who get less. And the nice thing is, it happens even with spaghetti sauce, salsa, all the, you know, you don't think of these as healthy foods, but they've got a lot of lycopene in them, and it'll pass into your bloodstream, and it'll protect you. Researchers have said, if it seems to be the case that a diet rich in vegetables and fruits, bringing you that lycopene, if that's protective, getting away from dairy products and fatty foods, that seems to be protective. What if I tested in men who have prostate cancer already? I want to share with you 2 important studies. One was by a researcher named Gordon Sachs at the University of Massachusetts. It was a small study. He brought in 10 men, and what he was tracking was called PSA doubling time. What is that? PSA, prostate-specific antigen. All this is a protein that's in the blood, and it's made by prostate cells, so if it's going up and up and up and up and up, that means there must be prostate cancer somewhere or something abnormal in the prostate that's causing it to rise. It's a good indicator of how we're doing with prostate health. And they measured doubling time. How long does it take for it to go from 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16? If it doesn't take much time, that means the cancer is rapidly progressing. Okay. They brought the men in. They asked them to follow a very low-fat vegan diet, meaning no animal products at all, very low in oils. And what they found was that their doubling time, which started out at about 6.5 months, meaning it took that long for it to double, it was stretched out in the course of this study to about 17.7 months, meaning their PSAs on average were rising, but very, very slowly. And there were several men in the study where their PSA actually started to fall. Well, that's encouraging. It looks like things are going in the right direction.
We're now pleased to show Dr. Barnard's presentation, Foods and Breast Cancer Survival, a chapter from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival DVD.
Not just the fat on your body, it's the fat on your plate. And researchers found that it doesn't just affect whether a woman develops cancer, it also affects whether she does well or not so well. At the State University of New York in Buffalo, researchers did an important study. They brought in about 900 women. Everybody already had breast cancer, and all they did was this. They looked at their diet, and then they looked at who did well and who didn't do so well. And what they found was stunning. The risk of dying at any point in time was increased by 40% for every 1,000 grams of fat the women ate per month. Now, let me make this practical for you. If I take a typical American diet, I throw in all the fat from the hamburgers that we might eat and the French fries and the salad oils, and you take all that fat and you add it up, and you compare that to a plant-based diet, a vegetarian diet, so there's no animal fat in it, and a diet where we keep the oils pretty low. Those 2 diets differ by anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 grams of fat every single month. That's good for a 40 to 60% difference in whether you're dead or alive at any single time point in the future. So it makes a big difference. We've put this to work, sometimes in rather unusual ways. I was sitting at my desk one day and the phone rang, and a young woman said, "Dr. Barnard?" I said, "Yes." "I can't get out of bed." I said, "What's the problem?" She said, "This happens to me every month. For one day, my cramps are so bad, I just can't function. I can't get through the day without taking enormous amounts of ibuprofen, and I'm scared about the side effects. I don't know what to do. And can you give me a more powerful pain medicine so that I can function?" And I said, "Yes, I can. Let me give you some painkillers for a couple of days." But it suddenly struck me, what are menstrual cramps? Every single month, the amount of estrogen in the body rises and then it falls. About 2 weeks in, that's when a woman is ovulating. And then the next 2 weeks, the amount of estrogen rises, thickening the lining of the uterus. What's it doing that for? Because the uterus is the most optimistic organ in the body. Every single month it's convinced we're going to get pregnant for sure, so it gets ready. But then about 2 weeks before the end of the month it says, didn't happen. So at that point, the inner lining of the uterus breaks up, it's lost in menstrual flow, and very maladjusted chemicals called prostaglandins are released. They cause cramping, and they cause headaches, and they make you feel crummy. And so as she's talking on the phone, I'm thinking, wait a minute, from breast cancer research, we know that if I cut the fat out of my diet, if I bring in the fiber, I can reduce the amount of estrogen, less thickening, less cramps. Let's try it. So I suggested this to her. I said, let me give you some painkillers for a couple days. But we want to do an experiment for about 4 weeks. How about this? No animal products in your diet. If there are no animal products, there's no animal fat. And I said, and keep the oils low. Throw away your bottles of cooking oil and all that stuff. Don't eat the greasy potato chips and things. Keep it very basic, very low in fat. She said, well, I'll try anything. Calls me up 4 weeks later. "Dr. Barnard, I just have one question." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Why don't doctors tell patients about this?" Her period just sneaked up on her, virtually no symptoms at all. Now, I thought that was intriguing. So I wrote a book that mentioned this, and I started getting calls from women who said, this is really true. And she also found that if she deviated from her diet early in the month, big bag of potato chips, something greasy, she would pay for it at the end of the month. So I did a research study with some colleagues at Georgetown University, and we found indeed it is true. We brought in a group of women who had serious menstrual cramps. We put them on a diet that was vegan and low in fat for 2 full menstrual cycles. It shortened the number of days of pain. It shortened the intensity of the pain. And PMS symptoms like water retention and bloating and irritability, all these things got better. What I'm suggesting is just this. The reason I tell you the story is we imagine that our hormones are controlling us. That's true. But we have a measure of control over them too. It's just we never had the instruction manual. Well, now we know how to do it. Let me tell you about 2 other studies that really tackle this problem. One was called the Women's Intervention Nutrition Study. And what they wanted to do was to see if diet makes a difference after a woman already has breast cancer. They brought in not quite 2,500 women. Everybody had breast cancer. And they put them on a diet that was pretty low in fat. About 15% of their calories came from fat. That's about half the American average. And then they tracked how they did as time went on. What they're specifically looking for was whether a woman was likely to have a cancer recurrence or a new cancer. Did you know this, that if a woman has already had breast cancer, she's at higher risk of getting a new cancer? So what they found was the diet worked. The likelihood of getting cancer recurrence or a new cancer was cut by about 24%. And when they looked at those that were estrogen receptor negative, that's a particular type of cancer, they were cut by about 42%. So diet, it's not perfect, but it's darn good, and we'll take it. Now, there was another study called the Women's Healthy Eating and Living Study, or the WELL study. And they went a step further. It was low in fat, but they also made a point of emphasizing vegetables and fruits and juices in particular, like carrot juice and that sort of thing. And it wasn't quite vegetarian, but it was going a little further in that direction. The study, as we're recording this now, is not yet finished. But I want to share with you some early results because they're exciting. I've been suggesting that if a woman loses weight, brings in the fiber, cuts the fat out of her diet, she's going to be able to control her hormones. Does it work? They took a sample of 291 of the women in the study, and they actually measured their hormones at the beginning and the end. I'm talking about estradiol and estrone. These are the estrogens in a woman's blood. And indeed, they dropped quite significantly just from the diet change alone. No medicines, no exercise, nothing, just a diet change. But then they went further, and they looked at the control group that was not asked to make any diet changes. It was a large group of women, about 1,500 women, and they varied. Some of them ate more vegetables, some of them ate less. And they did a blood test for carotenoids, beta-carotene, and its cousins. You can measure that in a person's blood. So if somebody says, I eat a lot of vegetables, you know, you can actually tell if it's true or not. So they measured them, and what they found was that those women who had the most carotenoids in their bloodstream, meaning they had been doing it, they'd been eating the vegetables and fruits, they had about a 45% reduction in their likelihood of having cancer come back. So bottom line is this. We still have good methods for detecting cancer. We have pretty good methods of treating it. But you know what? I never want to use them. I want to see what we can do to keep cancer beyond arm's length. And to do that, we need to just change what's on our plate. Thank you very much.
Our heartfelt gratitude, Dr. Neal Barnard, for allowing us to share your excellent and highly informative presentations from the Eating Right for Cancer Survival series with our viewers. By encouraging the adoption of the vegan lifestyle, you and members of the Cancer Project are on the forefront of improving public health in the United States and beyond. We wish you the very best in your future endeavors. For more details on the Cancer Project, please visit www.cancerproject.org. The two-set DVD, Eating Right for Cancer Survival, and the Cancer Survivor's Guide, a free-to-download ebook, are available at the same website.